which was filed way back in August 10, 2016. Maraming din nakakaalam nun, pero sinimulan agad nila ang pag-chat-chat pa. The second is the PDP Laban proposal, which mainly contains a huge amount of economic provisions. The third is yung concurrent resolution number 9, which is actually a proposal, a consolidation of the proposal of the Committee on Constitutional Amendments. Approved January 16, 2018, last January. Ngayon, that same committee has again filed another resolution, RBH 15. Yun yung author ni Gloria Arroyo, and of course, the belated, kaya belated ang tawag ko, the belated, parang deceased, CONCOM proposal of the former CJ Puno. So yun yung mga 5 proposals. The Arroyo proposal is now what's catching fire because she filed it on September 19, a few weeks ago, and it was approved October 2. Bilis. Talagang iba talaga pag speaker ka ng House. Bilis ng iyong bill. So, yan ang 5 proposals at ito ang paghahalawan natin ng ating discussion ngayon. Saan ko ito tutok? Ito. Page down. Yes. RBH 8, 18 ang states ng RBH 8, no? Resolution about houses number 8. Federal siya, pero presidential siya. Federal presidential. Ngayon, ang regions niya, pare-pareho. Pare-pareho ang regions niya, hindi siya nagbago. Dito sa NCR, National Capital Region, sinunod niya lang yung dating mga regional allocations. Hindi nagpakahirap si RBH 8. Ang kanyang ka-federal, dito tayo sa National Capital Region as a federal state, at ang capital ng NCR under the new federal system is in Navotas City. City na bang Navotas? O munisipyo pala? Navotas. Maraming nagugulat dyan, bakit daw Navotas, bakit hindi Quezon City, bakit hindi Manila. I usually joke that kasi sa Western Visayas, when I mention that Western Visayas, ang capital dito ay sabihin ng taga Iloilo, kami yun. Sabihin ng taga Negros, kami yun. Ang sasabihin ko, in Anenii, a small town in Antique, nagagalit yung taga Iloilo at Negros. Sabi ko, in fact, ayan ang main problem ng federalism later. Mag-aaway-aaway tayo kung saan ilalagay ang capital. Sa totoo lang, sa RBH 8, ang capital ng NCR is still Quezon City. Ayaw naman nilang ilipat yon. Pero ang PDP Laban, 12 states ang PDP Laban, but it's parliamentary federal. At yung CR Concurrent Resolution number 9, simple lang talaga, pag-isip ang mga congressman, 5 lang ang state natin sa buong Pilipinas. Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, and ARMN and NCR. Nagbibiro nga ako, ang federal state of Luzon, ang capital nyo ay sa Pagudpud, Ilocos Norte. Bakit ang layo? Sabi ko, well, actually, pagdidibatihan niya ng Quezon City, Manila, Cavite, Laguna, kung saan ang capital ng Luzon. Of course, the CONCOM proposal, presidential siya, federal, 12 states siya. Ang kay GMA, 18 states. Now, nalilito ako dito. Nang inaral namin itong chacha nila, we noticed several provisions. The first is, there are provisions that grants formidable powers to President Duterte. It doesn't even touch on federalism. Sabi ko kami anong kinalaman yan sa federalismo? Wala lang, talagang naglagay lang sila ng mga provisions that grants President Duterte. Actually, I was very courteous in the slide. Not formidable, dictatorial powers really ang ginagrant niya. The second is, it further opens up the country to transnational corporations. Tinigger nila ang economic provision ng Constitution at binago, pinalitan ng economic provisions. Ang sabi ko, bakit nyo ginagawa yan? Kasi kailangan daw i-tinker yung ECON provisions ng 1987 Constitution para daw mag-develop tayo. Sabi ko, akala ko federalismo will bring us to that development. Bakit nyo pa kailangan i-tinker to? Kailangan din daw kasi. The third thing I noticed, it dilutes and attacks and even deletes social justice provisions, including human rights provisions. The fourth is, it has self-serving provisions na wala talagang kinalaman sa federalismo except to enshrine self-serving provisions like pork barrel in the Constitution. Sabi ko, first time na ako nakarinig ng Chacha na ang pork barrel nilagay sa Constitution. What was my basis for that? For example, in granting President Duterte a... Dito kaya ako, marinig niyo ba? Kasi hindi ko mabasa eh. In granting President Duterte formidable powers, look at the provision under concurrent resolution number 9. The members of the interim parliament shall be the incumbent members of the Senate and the House. Parliament ang itatawag sa bagong Kongreso under concurrent resolution number 9. But when I see the word incumbent, medyo allergic po ako dyan. Kasi ibig sabihin ng incumbent, sila ang nakaupo ngayon, sila pa rin ang uupo later without the benefit of an election. But notice the second part of the parliament. Ang miyembro daw ng interim parliament is by appointment of the president, members of his cabinet. Sabi ko, ang lakas-lakas na nga ni President Duterte, may super majority niya sa Kongreso, bakit niya pa kailangan i-load ang dice by appointing members of his cabinet? Di ba mas lalong lumakas ang control niya sa Kongreso? Unless may paborito kayo, cabinet member na gustong maging parliamentarian, may paborito ba kayo? Sorry, wala na si Mocha Uson. Hindi na siya ma-appoint. Thank you. Hindi na siya ma-appoint. And I heard recently si Harry Roque din, hindi na ma-appoint. Anyway, nandiyan naman marami naman dyan. Si Secretary Lorenzana, si Sal Panelo, di ba? Pwede naman silang ma-appoint under that provision. What about the transition commission created by the Puno Concom Commission? There is a Federal Transition Commission under the Concom proposal na mag-create ng 10 ang miyembro niya. All appointed by President Duterte and it's headed by President Duterte. The first function of this commission is to organize and reorganize and fully establish the federal government. Ang final point niyan is there will be massive retrenchment in government service. Maraming tao ang matatanggalan ng pwesto and government employees. Mamaya I will discuss that. So very powerful indeed. It shall promulgate the necessary rules, regulations, orders, decrees, proclamations, and other issuances. Ang comment ko dyan dati, parang may legislative power ang Transition Commission to craft laws. Kaya tinanggal nila later on ang decrees kasi sabi nila hindi naman daw batas ang gagawin ng Transition Commission. To do all acts to implement the same, very dangerous and vague and overbroad phrase, and resolve all issues and disputes that may arise therefrom. Ang comment ko dyan, isn't it that the Transition Commission is given the judicial power to resolve disputes? For example, tinanggal ka ng Transition Commission sa gobyerno, gusto mo siyang i-contest, tingin mo unjust yung pagtanggal ng isang employee, can you go to the courts? Can you go to the Supreme Court for judicial remedy? No. The new Constitution says you should go to the very same commission that issued the order terminating your employment and ask them to decide on the very order they issue. So very powerful Transition Commission. Second, may control na siya sa Kongreso, pero may control din siya sa judiciary. How? Under concurrent resolution number 9, the retirement age of incumbent judges and justices shall be reduced to 65 years old. Ngayon, Under the 1987 Constitution, ang retirement age ng mga judges and justices is 70 years old. But under that, i-reset ito pag gagawing 65 years old. So, if you're a judge or a justice, magre-retire ka pa sana 2022, 2023, if the Constitution is ratified, aatras ka. Ngayon pa lang, retired ka na kasi 65 years old ka na. Who will replace the new judges? President Rodrigo Roa Duterte. The appointees of President Duterte will litter the judiciary long after his term ends in 2022. What is worse, however, is that under the Constitution, Article 8, Section 12 or RBH 8, judges and justices appointed by President Duterte under the Federal Constitution shall hold office until they reach the age of 75. So ang nangyari dito, pag incumbent ka na judge ngayon or justice ngayon, i-reduce ang retirement age mo to 65, kaya retired ka na, pero pag bagong appointee ka, i-increase ang iyong retirement age to 75. So grabe ang hawak ng presidente sa judiciary long after his term ends in 2022. What about the Independent Constitutional Commission? Look at Article 18, Section 12 of RBH 8. Ang nakalagay doon, the incumbent members of the Civil Service Commission, the Commission on Elections, and the Commission on Audit shall continue in office. That's good. They shall continue in office. But look at the next phrase. For 1 year after the ratification of this Constitution. Ibig sabihin, COMELEC chairman ka, magre-retire ka pa sana 2022, 2023, 7 years ang term ng mga Constitutional Commission members. However, with the ratification of the new Constitution, you have 1 year and your term is up. Who will appoint the next commissioners of this Constitutional Commission? President Rodrigo Roa Duterte. Ang lakas-lakas niya na sa Kongreso, ang lakas niya sa judiciary, but he will have control of the commission that oversees our elections and the commission that audits all government transactions and the commission which decides who is suspended and who is removed from government service. So, yung sinasabi ko kanina that it grants him formidable powers did not come from my opinion. It comes from the very exact provision quoted by the Chacha now pending in Congress. Hindi ko gawa-gawa yan, it came from them. But the moment you ask them to explain this, may problema silang malaki, hindi nila well ma-explain yan. Ngayon, why did I say that there are self-serving provisions in the proposed Constitution? Look at this provision under Concurrent Resolution number 9. Each district shall be entitled to an annual share in the state and federal budgets for its infrastructure as well as for the medical, educational, and social services of its inhabitants. Each member of the Senate and of the party list shall likewise be entitled to an amount for their infrastructure, social services, and educational services of their inhabitants. Ano po yan? That is actually pork barrel. Bibigyan ng pondo ang distrito, meaning si Kong, at yung mga senador na mamumudbud ng pera sa kanilang constituents for infrastructure, paggawa ng kalsada, educational, bigay ng scholarship, or medical, bigay ng medical assistance. Sabi ko, this is the worst chacha ever because this is the first time in history that I saw a chacha that puts in pork barrel in the Constitution. Ang reason nito is because we filed a case against pork barrel in the Supreme Court in the case of Araulio versus Aquino, at nagdesisyon ang Korte Suprema na unconstitutional ang pork barrel. So they enshrine it in the Constitution so that next time around, somebody goes to the Supreme Court will say, well, wala na kaming magawa. Nasa Constitution na kasi ang pork barrel.
Short point lang muna sa pork barrel before I continue with the lecture. Sabi nila sa akin palagi, Neri, why are you really against pork barrel? Hindi ba maganda na ibigyan ang tao ng pondo? Ang posisyon ko dyan has always been, yes, in fact, dapat diretso ang pondo sa mga tao at huwag nang sumabit pa sa bulsa ng mga politiko. The moment na i-divert mo ang pondo sa bulsa ng mga politiko, may malaki kang problema. Dapat ang pondo diretso sa ospital. Pag mahirap ka, qualified ka, libre na gamot mo, libre konsultasyon mo, yun. Pag i-divert mo kay Kong, instead na pipila sila sa ospital, pipila sila kay Kong. Doon sila hihingi. Ang problem naman doon, ang unang tanong ni Kong sa'yo, kung humingi ka ng scholarship o medical assistance, anong barangay ka? Pag sinabi mo, Barangay Reyes po ako, ay naku, talo ako doon. Di ba? Pag sinabi, Kapitan mo, Kapitan Ray mo, alam mo si Kapitan Ray kontra partido yan eh. Why should you be deprived of public funds by a congressman? Eh, hindi niya naman pera yon. Actually, pera mo yun eh. Bakit ka lulod sa kanya ko? Pahingi naman medical assistance. Eh, pera mo yun eh. Kung sarili niyang pera, we don't care. Ibigay naman yan sa pusa niya, bahala siya. But those are our funds. Cannot be given to him to decide sino bibigyan niya, sino hindi. Sino ba mas marunong kung ano ang criteria for scholarship? Jen ba o si Kong? Jen, siyempre. Sino ba nakakaalam kung saan ang patayo ng kalsada? DPWH ba o si Kong? DPWH, malay naman ni Kong kung saan kailangan ng kalsada. Yun ang point namin sa pork barrel na dapat hindi yan dapat ituloy because bilyon-bilyon ang nawawala dyan pag nagpo-pork barrel tayo. Is there no election in the current Chacha? Yes, there is. Palagi nilang sinasabi, walang Noel, walang talagang matutuloy ang election, but it's a possibility. I'm not saying they'll cancel the 2019 election. I'm saying it's a possibility. Look at the provision in CR number 9. It is also contained in the Chacha of Gloria Arroyo. Anong nakalagay doon? The first election under this constitution shall be held on the second Monday of May 2022. What does it mean? Pag naaprubahan ang Chacha today or this year or even January or February or March of 2019, what happens to the 2019 elections? The Constitution now says that the first election is 2022, therefore 2019 will be cancelled. Kasi the Constitution does not say it. Kaya maraming mga politiko ang nagkakandara pa na ma-approve ang Chacha ngayong taon or as fast as possible so that the 2019 elections will be cancelled. Yan po ang aking analysis sa provision. Bakit niyo pa kasi ilagay that the first election is 2022? Baka cancel ang 2019 pag ma-aprubahan siya before the 2019 elections. Why did I say may mga self-serving provisions? Look at this provision under Article 18, Section 12 of RBH 8. Nagbigay sila ng income tax exemption sa mga congressman at mga senador. Hindi na naman congressman at senador, but top government officials. The President, the Vice President, Senate President, Speaker of the House, Senators, members of the shall continue to receive the annual salaries that they are presently receiving at the time of the ratification of the Constitution without any income tax deduction. Can you imagine that? An ordinary teacher, sila dean, sila professor, they pay income tax, but these top government officials are going to change the Constitution and grant themselves income tax exemption. Parang hindi naman tama yun. Yung laki-laki ng sweldo ng mga kong, ng mga senador, bakit kayo hindi magbayad ng income tax? Anong kinalaman ng income tax exemption sa federalismo? Walang kinalaman yan, di ba? It's just a self-serving provision to grant themselves the benefit of income tax exemption. That's the reason why I said kanina, one of the provisions sa Chacha are self-serving provisions like this income tax exemption. Why did I say kanina it attacks, dilutes, or deletes human rights or social justice provision? Look at their amendment sa Bill of Rights. Under the 1987 Constitution, the Bill of Rights simply says that no law shall be passed abridging the free exercise of the freedom of speech, expression, assembly, etc. But they inserted one word in the Bill of Rights that practically changes everything. And that word is responsible. No law shall be passed abridging the responsible exercise of the freedom of expression, speech, etc. What is the problem with that? The problem with that is who decides whether you're exercising your rights responsibly. Kayo sa Adamson, rally-rally kayo against death penalty. Oh, that's an irresponsible exercise of your freedom of expression. Kaya nga kayo nalista dito Nag-iimbita kasi kayo ng mga kung sino-sino Ganon nang sasabihin nila. Why did you invite the Chief Justice, the former Chief Justice actually, in your school? Why did you rally against the death penalty or the burial of Marcos? But that's an exercise of your freedom of expression. Kaya lang sabihin nila, irresponsible po yun. I know many people, probably many of us here voted for President Duterte, but look at this. Isn't this true? President Duterte is intolerant of dissent. He can dish it, but he cannot take it. Tatawagin kanyang gago, kriminal, bobo, mumurahin kanya. Pati Diyos, tinawag niyang stupido. Pero ikaw, you mentioned something, Mr. President, courteous pa nga. What did the bishop say? The bishops merely said, Mr. President, sa Tokhang, please, EJK, human rights. Simple lang. Pero galit na galit siya. He is going to use, mabuti sana, he is going to use the personal Facebook niya para birahin ka, pero gagamitan ka niya ng presidential powers. Hindi siya sporte. Imbestiga ka ng NBI, ng police, impeachment, kawaranto, tanggalin yung amnesty mo, all these things. Diba? So sabi ko, mahirap pag intolerant ang president of dissent at binigyan mo siya ng poder to define a responsible exercise of your human rights. Now we go to the last part of my outline, which is the attack on economic provisions. There are many provisions in their proposed Chacha that practically deleted a lot of social justice provisions in the 1987 Constitution. Under the 1987 Constitution, bawal ibenta ang lupa sa foreigners. Bawal ibigay sa foreigners ang ating natural resources. May restrictions on citizenship. Dapat 60% of any corporation exploring or exploiting our natural resources must be Filipino. Control of education, Filipino. Public utilities, Filipino. Under the proposed Chacha, and all 5 Chacha proposals include this. They may not agree on some points, iba presidential, iba parliamentary, but they agree on one thing, palitan ng economic provisions of the 1987 Constitution. Sa proposal nila, payagan ang foreigners na ibenta ang lupa. May main problem, pag payagan mo ang foreigners na bumili ng lupa dito, is, una, tataas ang presyo ng lupa. Magkano ang lupa ngayon sa Metro Manila? Mahal na siguro. Ang pinakamura, 10,000 per square meter. Kahit 5,000, tingnan natin kaya. But here comes Mr. Nakamura from Tokyo. He can afford 20,000 per square meter or 30,000 per square meter. There will come a time when almost 60, 70, 80% of our lands will be bought by these foreigners. Yan ang problem po natin dyan. Ang susunod na henerasyon ng mga Pilipino, including you, can no longer afford to buy land. Pangalawa, wala ba tayong takot dyan for national security or sovereignty? What if China buys a whole lot of lands all over the Philippines? Lahat ng beachheads sa Palawan, bilhin niya. Ngayon may landing site na siya, just in case meron tayong gulo sa West Philippine Sea. If only for this thing, people should oppose this Chacha because it will open up the country's lands to transnational corporations. Exploit and use our natural resources. If you allow transnational corporations and foreigners to do that in our country, ano ang main problem dyan? Ang main problem dyan is this. Hindi naman apo ng mga foreigners ang titira dito sa Pilipinas. The moment na makalbo na nila ang bundok, mahukay na nila ang mineral ores, masira na ang mga rivers natin, they can pack up and leave. I remember when I was a human rights lawyer many years ago, people of Marinduque came to me and said, Attorney, pwede bang kasuhan ng Mark Copper? Nasira ang Buwak River. But by that time, ang Mark Copper was no longer here. It's in Canada, I think, or Australia. Sabi ko, paano po natin kakasuhan yun sa Australia or sa Canada? These big mining corporations. Wala nga kaming pamasahe papuntang Marinduque. That's the problem with opening up our natural resources to transnational corporations. Own and control our education. Ang edukasyon, yan ang umuhubog ng nasyonalismo. Edukasyon, yan ang umuhubog ng ating kultura at patriotismo. Ibibigay mo yan sa mga transnational corporations or big foreign universities, may problema ata tayong malaki dyan. I don't want to see the day when my grandson will come to me and say, Lolo, sabi ni Professor Mamunluk, hindi na nag-register ang Mamunluk sa estudyante. No? Si Dean, alam ni Dean ang Mamunluk kung ano yan. Pero yung recent, Mamunluk. Professor Mamunluk said, na hindi naman daw sa atin ang West Philippine Sea. Sabi niya, sa China daw talaga yan. Is it possible? I hate to see the day when my son will come to me and say, Pai, sabi ni Professor Nakamura from University of Japan, in World War II, hindi naman daw totoo na may comfort women. Can you imagine that? 12 to 13-year-old Filipina girls brought to the camps to be prostituted by the Japanese forces during World War II. They were not even acknowledged until now. And here you are, having an educational system that will completely obliterate the memory of these Filipino women. If only for this, para sa akin, yung control sa edukasyon, if only for this, nalamanan ko yung Chacha. Because I find that very dangerous. Control of public utilities. In the first place, ang public utilities dapat hindi binibenta sa private corporations. Ano bang public utilities? Kuryente, tubig, transportasyon, komunikasyon, di ba? Hindi mo pwedeng hayaan yan sa private corporations because if private corporations get into it, profit is the main motivation and public service becomes an afterthought. Look at MRT. Sabi nila dati, ibenta ang MRT para gumaan, malinis, efficient, mura pa, private corporation. Tingnan niyo yung nangyari sa MRT. Hindi naman maganda yung LRT, government operated yan for a long time. Hindi naman siya maganda, pero better na lang siya kesa sa MRT. So I don't see any reason bakit ibenta ang public utilities sa mga private corporations. Kaya ang mahal ng tubig, ang mahal ng kuryente. And secondly, sabi ko nga sa mga kasamaan ko sa Kongreso, wala ba kayong naisip na security problem dyan? E pag binili ng China ang Meralco, pag binili ng China ang Maynila, may gulo tayo sa West Philippine Sea, iba-blackout nila ang buong Metro Manila, luluhod tayo sa kanya. O kaya i-withhold niya ang tubig sa Metro Manila as owner of Maynila, then pahaw-pahaw na natin ngayon. Dito, di ba? So, yan ang problema natin. Pahawakan mo ang kuryente at tubig sa mga dayuhan para sa akin. I don't know for you, but sabi ko baka dollars na pinabayaran natin dyan sa kuryente natin. Din, ano bang importante sa iyo? Tubig o kuryente? Tubig. Sabi ng nanay ko, mabuti pa mawala lang yung kuryente, huwag lang ang tubig. Tinanong ko yung anak ko, sabi ko, sabi niya, tatay, wala akong pakialam kay may tubig o wala. Basta dapat may kuryente para ma-charge ko ang iPhone ko at yung maka-text ako at mga Facebook. So, din, Hindi na kaya nag-work yung tubig ang mas mahalaga sa kuryente. Those are the provisions in their Chacha. And for me, anong kinalaman yan sa federalismo? Ibenta mo ang lupa sa dayo, anong kinalaman sa federalismo? Wala. This is a self-serving agenda of some business people and transnational corporations to amend our constitution so they can get in, not through the back door, not through dummies, but in red carpet in the front door. Yan po ang problema dito sa Chacha nila. And secondly, they deleted certain provisions. One of the most important provision in our Constitution now is Article 12, Section 3. The first thing they deleted is private corporations may not hold such alienable lands of public domain except by lease for a period not exceeding 25 years, renewable for not more than 25 years, and not more than 1,000 hectares. Deleted. Anong ibig nila sabihin? Pwedeng i-lease ng private corporation for more than 50 years ang mga bundok natin when they mine our mountains. More than 1,000, 20,000, 30,000 hectares. Very restrictive po kasi ito sa mga mining corporations. It's really restricted to them because 1,000 hectares is not enough for mining companies for their mining operation. So they have to take that out. Sabi ko nga, alam niyo, sabi kasi nila, pag hindi mo payagan yung mga investors na yan o pagbenta sa kanilang lupa, hindi sila mag-i-invest. Sabi ko, sa China ba, pwede bang bumili ang foreigners ng lupa doon? Hindi naman, pero ang daming investor doon. So baka naman ang reason bakit din sila nag-i-invest dito. Kasi maraming kurakot dito, laki-laki ng babayaran nila. Diba? So, I will explain the issue of foreign investors mamaya, no? Pero yan yung mga proposals dyan. Yung labor rights, under the 1987 Constitution, maraming rights ang manggagawa, laborers, in-transfer nila naman lahat ng mga rights na yon sa Chacha nila. So, they retain many of those rights. But they deleted 4 important rights of labor. And what are the rights that they deleted in their Chacha? The first is they deleted security of tenure. Akala ko, sabi ko, bakit nyo dinelete ang security of tenure? Isn't that a very important right of workers? Akala ko, ayaw natin ng contractual, ayaw natin ng endo. And the main essence of contractualization and endo is the absence of the right of workers to security of tenure. Parang iba ang message sa Chacha, iba naman ang message ng Palasyo pag sinasabi nila, we are against contractualization. I-delete mo ang security of tenure. They deleted humane conditions of work. What's wrong with humane conditions of work? Why are you going to delete that? Ibig sabihin, kahit magtatrabaho kayo later on sa kung saan man na sobrang init, kahit inhumane ang conditions of work, pwede na because it's no longer a labor right under the Constitution. They also deleted just share in the fruits of production. What's wrong with that? Just naman yung share mo eh. Hindi naman unjust eh. And they deleted living wage. That is the problem there. They also deleted Section 3, the state shall afford full protection to labor, local and overseas, organized and unorganized. Ang tanong ko palagi dyan sa mga kasama ko sa Kongreso, what is wrong with that provision? Hindi ba tama lang naman na proteksyonan ng gobyerno ang kanyang manggagawa, lokal man yan o OFW? Organisado man yan sa mga union o hindi organisado? Yun nga lang nandyan yung provision na yan. Ang daming OFW natin ang napapariwara abroad. So why are you going to delete that? Is there something wrong with that? Andito na si Florin. Wala pa. Of course, abolish ang agrarian reform and maraming pang bagay like industrialization. Now, give me another 1 minute sa industrialization. Why did they delete that. I have to be honest with you. When President Duterte came to power at nangako siya na tanggalin niya ang kontraktualisasyon at nangako siya mag-industrialization tayo, I have to admit sa inyo lahat, medyo napabilib niya ako. President Duterte can be very, he can inspire you to believe in him. Iba pala pag minumura mo, nakakapaniwala. Pag sasabihin mo na, tatanggalin ko yung kontraktualisasyon na yan. Medyo okay. Pero pag sinabi niya, tatanggalin ko yung PI na kontraktualisasyon na yan, medyo, ako siguro to. Kasi minura niya yung kontraktualisasyon. Pero ngayon, ano nangyari sa kontraktualisasyon? Nothing. You will graduate and many of you will be forced to work in a contractual system. One of the worst inventions of business against workers. Second is industrialization. Why are we poor? Why are we poor? I mean, there are many reasons why we're poor. May corruption. But in economics, why are we poor? We are poor because we do not produce what we need. We produce what other countries need. Yan ang problem talaga dyan. We produce the abaca, the copra, the sugar, the pineapple, the niyog. Who produces our needs? Who produces this t-shirt? Who produces the microphone? Who produces the electric fan? Akala nyo, electric fan, gawa natin yan. No, open that. Ang makina niyan galing Taiwan or somewhere else. Pupusta ako, lahat ng t-shirt dito, malamang galing China yan. Ang medyo yaman-yaman dyan, galing UK, ukay-ukay. Di ba? Wala na. Dati-rati, ang panahon namin, wala akong kaedad dito eh. Panahon namin ni Father Manny, we produced our shirts. Meron dating Crispa Redmanizers. Toyota ka ba, Professor Ray? Crispa? Toyota. Crispa kami. Dati-rati, nagpo-produce tayo ng ating shirts. Now we don't produce it. How can you develop pako man lang hindi mo ma-produce? Don't you know we cannot produce per libre in the Philippines? We don't have a steel industry. We need industrialization. We need a steel industry. Ano ang industrializasyon? Buhos kapital ang gobyerno sa lokal na negosyo at lokal na industriya. That is industrialization in simple terms. Pag nagkaroon ng industrialisasyon, libo-libong factory ang susulpot sa ating bansa, gumagawa ng sarili nating pangangailangan, that is the resolution of our problems in poverty. If we continue this import-export mechanism, we will never get out of poverty. Bibenta ka ng niyog, bibili ka ng electric fan. Bibenta ka ng pineapple, bibili ka ng aircon sa kanila. No, we should produce what we need. At pag nagsimula na yung libo-libong paggawaan sa buong bansa, yun ang tunay na empleyo. Not in call centers, not in SM as lady, producing factories, producing what we need. Sinasabi natin, we produce asukal, we produce sugar, benta natin sa kanila ng mura, sa abroad, gagawin nilang tsokolate, ibenta sa atin mas mahal. Why don't we build a factory na ang ating asukal, tayo mismo ang gagawa ng tsokolate? That is industrialization and that will provide employment. Baka ang mga factories pa ang nagsasabi na, dito na kayo sa akin kasi yung factory sa kabila yung office sa kabila, mura ka sa auto. Dito ka na sa akin. Pinag-aagawan pa yung graduates na anos. But as of now, you have one factory, 1,000 applicants, there's nothing there. Sabihin nila sa'yo, contractual ka, kalahati ng sahod mo. Ayaw mo, di wag, maraming pang nakapila dito. That is the problem with our economy. And President Duterte had the guts to say, I will go for industrialization. Bakit previous presidents didn't go for industrialization? Because Japan said no. US said no. Ayaw na malalaking bansa na mag-industrialize tayo kasi, di ba, produce tayo ng aircon, later on, hindi na tayo bibili sa kanila.
Later on, sabi ng Korea dati, we will industrialize, we will produce our own car. Sabi ng iba, sabi ng Japan, you cannot do that. Pinilit ng Korea, look where they are now. Meron na silang Kia, meron na silang Hyundai. Diba? That is the road to development. So yun yung problema dito because they deleted the very important economic provision sa ating bansa. Congress may by law allow small-scale utilization of natural resources by Filipino citizens. What is wrong with that? Ang sabi na naman ng Constitution dyan, sa 1987 Constitution, Kongreso, wag na naman yung big-scale utilization of natural resources. Big mining companies, big logging companies, also take care of small-scale utilization. Fisher folks, deleted yan. Sabi ko, what's wrong with that? And look at this. State protection of the right of subsistence fishermen and their right in offshore fishing against foreign intrusion. What is wrong with that? It merely says that gobyerno, proteksyonan mo rin ang mangingisda mo na nangingisda sa Scarborough Shoal o sa laot pag may mga naghaharas sa kanila na ibang bansa. Ibig ba sabihin nito, pag nangingisda sila sa Scarborough Shoal at hinaras sila ng China, hindi na siya poproteksyonan ng gobyerno. That's why you're going to delete such a very innocuous provision sana na wala namang sanang diferensya sa atin. Delete Congress may provide, sorry. In the grant of rights and privileges and concessions covering the national economy and patrimony, the state shall give preference to qualified Filipinos. Deleted. What's wrong with that? Ang sinasabi niya lang naman, pag may qualified na foreigner at may qualified na Pilipino, gobyerno, piliin mo yung qualified Filipino. Hindi. Qualified naman silang dalawa eh. Ang masama, pag unqualified at Pilipino, piliin mo siya over a qualified foreigner. Eh dito, qualified naman silang dalawa. Ang sinasabi, give preference naman sa mga Pilipino sa trabaho. They deleted that. All revenues and assets of non-stock, non-profit educational institution used actually, directly, and exclusively for educational purposes shall be exempt from taxes and duties. Deleted. What is the problem with that? Sinasabi na naman, pag may isang educational institution na non-profit, non-stock naman, hindi dapat exempt siya sa income tax kasi or sa customs or other taxes. Kasi pag i-tax mo yan, pag nagbili siya ng computer, i-tax mo, hindi tataas. Tataas ang tuition. I remember that, nung Yolanda, humingi kami ng tulong from abroad. They sent us 2 or 3 trailers ata. Wala naman kaming pera. Customs duties nila sa customs, hindi namin malabas. Kasi wala naman kaming pera pambayad ng customs duties. So tatamaan ang mga eskwela na non-stock, non-profit just because tinanggal ang tax exemption nila. In fact, I still remember itong mga nagtuturo ng indigenous people, mga lumad. They went up to the mountains to teach the lumads, give them basic education. What's wrong with that? Itatax mo sila. Pag may nag-donate sa kanila ng computer o textbook, itatax mo yun. Hindi wala nga pansweldo sa teacher nila yan eh. Yan ang problema dito is yung impact on educational institutions, and of course, impact on equipments, impact on tuition fees and everything. Attacking urban poor rights, tignan nyo to. Please, look at this. Sabi sa Constitution na yon, no resettlement of urban or rural dwellers shall be undertaken without adequate consultation. Is there anything wrong with that? Ang sinasabi lang, huwag ka naman mag-demolish agad. May konsultasyon naman. There's nothing wrong with that, so why take it away? Ibig sabihin, you will resettle them without consultation. Maraming hindi naman tama yan. And look at the next provision they deleted. Urban or rural poor dwellers shall not be evicted, nor their dwellings demolished, except in accordance with law and in a just and humane manner. Is there anything wrong with that? Sabi ko sa kanila, anong masama doon? Sinasabi lang naman, pag urban o rural poor ka, hindi ka naman pwedeng i-evict o i-demolish ang bahay mo, maliban na lang kung naaayon sa batas.
at sa isang makatarungan at makataong paraan. Kaya hindi ka dapat ma-demolish pag umuulan. Kasi inyong main yan, umuulan ka saan titira yan? Did this provision prohibit demolition? No, it didn't. It only said do it in a humane and a just manner. Pag may bagyo, huwag ka naman mag-demolish. Bagyo yan, hintayin mo muna matapos. But they deleted this provision. So, last part na lang ng aking presentation. Sabi ni President Duterte sa CONCOM, when the CONCOM proposal came into being, sabi, marami kasi nagreklamo, there is no prohibition in their chacha that the incumbent president can run in 2020. President Duterte said, I will not run in 2022. Probably true. Ako naman, they give him that benefit. Now, ang problema, hindi kasi nalagay. So, ang ginawa ni President Duterte was, sige, maglagay kayo dyan na magkaroon ng transition election once the Constitution is approved. So, pag sinabing ganon, tingnan niyo ang provision. Within 6 months from the ratification of the Federal Constitution, the President shall call for an election for the transition President and Vice President in tandem. Ngayon lang ako nakakita ng Constitution na naglagay ng phrase in tandem sa Constitution. Parang riding in tandem. Diba? Parang naka-enshrine na siya. But ang problema dito is this. It did not prohibit, ibig sabihin niya na election kasi halimbawa na-approve siya today, within 6 months, dapat may transition election for the President and Vice President. Pag sinabing in tandem, ang boto sa Presidente ay boto sa Vice Presidente. Ibig sabihin, pag panalo ang Presidente, yung Vice Presidente nga panalo na yun. There's no longer any need to vote for the Vice President under that provision. The problem here is this. It did not prohibit President Duterte from running in the transition election. So what if he calls for a transition election that changes his mind? Hindi mo na, mahirap ang transition, I'd like to guide it, I'll run as the transition president. Kukuha siya ng vice president niya, sino gusto niyang vice president ni President Duterte? Kainin siya, may gusto ba kayo? Bongbong Marcos daw, di si Bongbong na ngayon yung vice president. Mananalo ba si President Duterte? Definitely yes. I think he will win the transition election hands down. Ang hirap manalo kay President Duterte ngayon. He's so powerful na lahat ata nagkagdarapan na maging membro ng partido niya. Dalawa na ang partido niya, nagkakagulo pa sila. He will win. And of course, whoever is his vice president will win. I mean, he did not even run. He can choose his own presidential candidate. Sino naman ang gusto niyo? Marami naman niya pagpipilian. He can make that person run, and this person wins, and the vice president, of course, also wins. What is the impact? The impact is saan pupunta si Leni Robredo. There's a new transition vice president. It's not important whether you voted for Leni Robredo or not. It doesn't matter. She's the vice president. Pero in this scheme of things, she's no longer the vice president because there's a new vice president elected by the people. I've heard of removing impeachable officials of impeachment. Ilang beses kami nag-file dati kay President Arroyo niyan. Now they've invented a new way of removing an impeachable official through co-warranto. Now they've invented a newer version of removing an impeachable official through chacha. Very brilliant actually yan. That's a very brilliant maneuver. So is President Duterte serious about diffusing from Imperial Manila the funds? During election po, sabi ni President Duterte, ang problema sa bansa natin, nakacentralize ang pondo sa Imperial Manila. Para sa aming probinsyano, I'm from the Visayas, at mga Mindanao, ang ganda nun. But all the while, I was thinking, if he wins as president, he will retool the budget. Sasabihin niya, Imperial Manila, 2% ng kabuang budget pupunta sa iyo. Ang 98% i-distribute ko sa lahat ng probinsya. Simple. You don't even need to go to federalism for that. Because the president controls the budget. So I studied his budget. In 2016, that was during the time of Aquino, NCR got 445 billion pesos in regional allocation. Is that big? That is very big. It is 15% of the total budget went to NCR. Paano kami sa Visayas? We only received 10% of the total budget. NCR, one region, Visayas, tatlong region, Western Visayas, Central Visayas, Eastern Visayas, and we just got 10% of the budget. What about Mindanao? Mindanao had 13% of the total budget, pero 5 regions yun, plus ARMM pa. 13% lang. NCR, isang region, 15%. So malaki ang binigay ni President Aquino na budget sa NCR. But I studied President Duterte's budget in 2018 and look at his budget for 2018. He gave NCR 817 billion pesos. A staggering 22% of the budget. Never before in our history has so much fund been centralized to NCR. Ano nangyari sa Visayas? Well, umakyat kami konti, 11%. Yung Mindanao, 16%, but still. Go to the NEP, the National Expenditure Program for the 2019 budget, nasa Kongreso. Yan ang pagbubutuhan nila mamaya. Look at the budget there. Ang 817 billion pesos na budget ng NCR in 2018 grew to 834 billion pesos in 2019. Umakyat pa. Visayas, 412 billion, bumaba pa to 400 billion. Confirm that with the NEP submitted by President Duterte to Congress for the 2019 budget. Bumaba pa ang Visayas, and look at Mindanao. From 608 billion in 2018, it went down to 585 billion. So ano pala yung campaign promise na yon na i-diffuse ang pondo sa mga probinsya? Joke rin pala yun. That is the problem with this chacha because it could have been resolved by a simple retooling of the budget. You don't need to go to federalism for that. Now let's go to the more controversial today, yung chacha ni President Arroyo. Look at that. She filed it on September 19, 2018. Barely, a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks. And it got approved on October 2. Very fast. Resolution of both houses number 8. What does it contain? The first thing is Article 8, Section 4. It deletes term limits for all public officials, including congressmen and senators. Matagal na kasi gusto ni President Arroyo yan. Matanggal ang term limits. Kasi tatlong term lang si Kong dapat umalis na siya dyan. Gusto nila tanggalin. So they can run forever and ever sa Pilipinas. Akala ko walang forever. May forever pala dito sa chacha ni GMA. That's very self-serving para sa akin. Article 17, Section 3, the first national and local election is May 2022. Na-explain ko na kanina, it could lead to the cancellation of election. Article 17, ito may pinagdidebatihan. Section 4, in case of removal, death of the incumbent president, the incumbent Senate president shall act as president. Paano na nangyari dun sa vice president? Ulitin ko, it doesn't matter whether you like Robredo or not. The fact is, she is the vice president. So kung may nangyari sa presidente, the people voted the vice president as the successor of the president. They didn't vote for, sino Senate President natin ngayon? Tito Soto. They didn't vote for Tito Soto to replace the president. They voted for Tito Soto as a senator, not even as a Senate President. So, Senate President ang magre-replace. Kung incapable ang Senate President, hindi rin siya capacitated. Who will succeed the President? The Speaker of the House of Representatives. Gloria na naman. Sabi ko, this is a backdoor, back to Malacanang Palagi niya lang sinasabi, Neri, you're always anti-chacha. Bakit nilalabanan mong chacha? Sabi ko kasi, kinakargahan nyo Kinakargahan nyo palagi ang chacha. That's the problem here. Ako, I'm not an absolutist sa chacha. I think there should be constitutional reforms. No problem. But that reform must be for the better not for the worst. You don't include pork barrel there. You don't include income tax exemption. You don't include things like lifting of term limits. Si Florin nandiyan na, wala pa. Kasi I can just go on a little if he's still not there. Malapit lang naman na. So yan po ang problema ngayon. Sabi nila, kasi ang problema kasi may protest laban kay Leni Robredo, si Bongbong Marcos. So mahirap, confusing eh. Pag halimbawa, siya magsasucceed, natalo siya, problema ni Bongbong. Ibig ko lang sabihin, there have been many vice presidents and speakers na may election protest before. I mean, I'm sure, marami ng election, may mga election protest talaga sa ating election against the Vice President, against the Speaker of the House, against the Senate President. Alam mo naman dito sa Pilipinas, pinoprotesta lagi ng natalo ang nanalo. But it didn't take them out from the constitutional succession. Wala namang sinabi sa Konstitusyon na the Vice President will succeed the President unless may election protest siya. Wala namang sinabing ganon. Secondly po, what if this Constitution is ratified in November, for example, and Leni Robredo wins in January? Now, she is now the legitimate Vice President without any office at all. Aren't you, sabi nga ni Professor Ray kanina, practically nullifying the votes of the Vice President? Binoto siya to succeed, not to be a lame duck doon sa tabi-tabi. Yan naman. Kaya ang sabi kay GMA dito, this is another parang self-serving, provision para for more power. And in fact, she's in line kayo sa succession kung susundin mo yung Senate President and Speaker of the House. So, last point, sabi nila, dati-rate, mahirap tayo, when I was in the Senate as a resource person, one of the prof federally said, kaya tayo mahirap dahil sa Konstitusyon. Sabi ko, excuse me po, hindi tayo naghirap dahil sa Konstitusyon. Mahirap tayo dahil may kontraktualisasyon. Mahirap tayo dahil mga magsasaka walang lupa. Mahirap tayo dahil may korupsyon. Mahirap tayo dahil may political dynasty. Yan kaya i-resolve mo, baka hindi na kailangan mag-tsa-tsa. Pero pag hindi mo ni-resolve yung kawalan ng lupa ng mga sasaka, ng mga manggagawa, may kontraktualisasyon, may korupsyon, walang mangyayaring pag-unlad sa Pilipinas kahit mag-tsa-tsa tayo taon-taon. Because form is not decisive in economic development. If federalism will lead a country to development, all countries around the world should have been federal. There are many who are not even federal because that's not true. That if you change the form of government, your country will develop. There are rich, mayamang mga bansa na federal, Germany. May mahirap na federal, Somalia. May mayaman na parliamentary, England. May mahirap na parliamentary, Nepal. May mayamang presidential, Amerika. May mahirap na presidential, Pilipinas. Wala yan sa forma kasi it's in the system that you have in your country. So, para sa akin po, there is no compelling reason for tsa-tsa as the Constitution is not the cause of our problem. Hindi problema ang Konstitusyon. Kaya ang pag-amyenda sa kanya ay hindi solusyon. Very, very basic yun. At for them to argue, medyo may problema tayo pag sinabi nila, palitan mo lang ang Konstitusyon, it will be there. And there is no clamor even. Look at the slides of Professor Ray. Many of them are even opposed. Kaya pag sinasabi nila, look at all the tsa-tsa provision. In the whereas clause, they will say, whereas there has been a great clamor by the Filipino people to change the Constitution. There's no clamor. Ang problema ng tao, inflation. Green. Yun ang problema ng tao ngayon. And tsa-tsa will not solve those problems. Sabi nila, Neri, what about if voting separately ang Senado at Kongreso? Kasi yun ang pinagdidebatihan. Sabi ko, whether voting separately or jointly, mahirap mag-tsa-tsa. Sabi ko sa mga senador when I was in the Senate, mahirap ang tsa-tsa at mapapariwara lang kayo, especially with GMA at the helm. What about if Constitutional Convention? Pwede ba? Sabi ko, kahit na Constitutional Convention, hindi maaari. The repressive political conditions today does not allow for a free deliberation of Chacha. Dito sa Adamson, may kalayaan tayong magsalita dito kasi, it's part of pursuit of academic excellence and knowledge of what the issues are. But when you go to the, provinces at magkakampanya ka doon ng no to Chacha sa plebiscite, siyempre, ordinaryong tao, takot sila na sabihin, ayaw ko sa Chacha kasi it will grant formidable powers to President Duterte. Ayaw ko sa Chacha because it will give tax exemption to Congress. No, the political conditions today do not allow for a free deliberation of charter change. So, in the end, sabi ko, even if you are pro-federalism, you should oppose this Chacha because this is beyond federalism. Ibenta mo ang lupa sa foreigners, ang tindi ng resulta niyan sa ating ekonomiya. This is beyond federalism. Even if you are pro-Duterte, you should oppose this Chacha. Why? Because this transcends President Duterte na. Bubuksan mo ang natural resources sa transnational corporations. Kahit pumoto ka pa kay President Duterte, you cannot in conscience support this Chacha. Presidents come and go. In a few years' time, President Duterte will not be there. But the moment we approve this Chacha, this will be with here. This will be with us for a long period of time, condemning our children to eternal poverty and our children's children. We cannot sacrifice and exchange the future generation, exchange it for our loyalties to a temporary president. Kaya sabi ni Chief Justice Davide, this Chacha is the road to hell. In addition to that, this Chacha is the road to dictatorship and eternal poverty. Maraming salamat po. Magandang araw.